Just poke me if I talk too much.
All right. Hello, welcome. This is interview number 2 in Chicago Theater Blog's Arthur Miller project. I'm Oliver Sava, here with Kimberly Senior, director of Timeline's All My Sons and Straw Dog's upcoming Uncle Vanya. Here we are at Straw Dog's rehearsal space, and we're going to ask her a few questions. First off, why All My Sons?
Whoa!
Yes, let's start off with the big one.
Well, All My Sons is a play I've loved for a really long time. Like, it's every director calls it something different, but I call it like the list of plays I'm going to direct before I die, and All My Sons was on that list. So I've been attracted to it for a long time, and had been in conversations with several theaters about the play, actually. And PJ and I got to talking about the play because it felt really timely. I mean, not certainly in lieu of like things like Halliburton and other sort of companies and their relationship to industry during wartime. I mean, obviously like, that thing is a connection, but it really struck us. Both of us are very involved and excited about getting Obama elected, and we talked a lot about what he sort of represented for our times, and this idea of a personal responsibility and something about being a citizen, right? It's not, we're not just like people getting by anymore and just like protecting our own families. It means everything's even going on with healthcare now indicates that it was about what is our role as people in the world? Like, what is our responsibility to each other as citizens of the world? And that sort of accountability and responsibility kept coming up, and the play really spoke to that for both of us, which has been something that's attracted to me about the play since when September 11th happened. I remember sitting around with a lot of my theater friends and us being like, wow, we make plays, like perhaps we should be doing something a little bit more important with our time. But then thinking about what is even the responsibility of an artist and as a citizen of the world, and I think that the play really speaks to that, and that's something that I want to kind of put out into the world that gets an audience talking, and so yeah, there you go.
A lot of the reviews have talked about the really strong female presence in the play. Was that a conscious choice to bring the women up there, or how did that end up happening?
Not at all. It was like, it was a really happy accident. I mean, working with women like Janet and Cora, who are by nature very strong, that was going to happen. I mean, I guess, right, subconsciously something in casting was true. But I think this is something that I think about plays that the play wasn't written today. But when it was written as a contemporary play. And I really feel that way. I mean, the same about Uncle Vanya, and that we have to use our own lens when we're reading these plays, because that's who the audience is for. Otherwise, it becomes sort of a museum piece and too detached from us, and why would anybody sit for like 2.5 hours? Like, when we're in a museum, we spend like 5 to 10 minutes looking at stuff that we'll enjoy, but to really engage an audience on a deeper level, I think we have to use our contemporary lens. And so all of the answers were in the text. You know, when we, especially with Kate Keller, the mother that Janet played, you know, we felt like, oh, former interpretations of this role, she just sort of appears as crazy. And I said, well, if she's crazy, we discredit her, and we don't believe her. In contemporary world, we find crazy women to be not worth listening to. And so then we thought, well, what's her situation? Like, well, her son may or may not be dead. What mother wouldn't want to believe that her son was alive? Like, that seems, as a mother, I also am like, who would not think that? But she's not crazy. Who would not do these things that she's doing? So we tried to find a way to make her now not crazy, which ended up reading as strong. And the thing with Anne, she's always played as this sort of girlish ingenue. Well, the fact of the matter is she's 27 years old, living in New York City by herself and unmarried in that time. Like, she has a job. Like, she's pretty savvy. She's pretty cosmopolitan. And she comes there with that letter, knowing that she might ruin people's lives, but she was not going to leave there alone, and she was not going to leave there unhappy. So that's kind of strong. Like, that's no wallflower. So it's all sort of in the text. And 2 really great actresses.
What was your directing process like going into it? Was it different? I know that originally it was supposed to be here at Straw Dog, and then rights got kind of mixed up, but...
Yes and no. I mean, it wasn't really... no one had the rights, because no one had the rights. There were a bunch of different reasons that nobody had the rights, some of which are, like, unbeknownst to everyone.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was that we did not know... I mean, Timeline announced their season, announcing plays 2, 3, and 4 without announcing play 1, because we did not have the rights. And every day, PJ and I were on the phone and me being like, I have to plan my fall, and I don't know what's going on, and, all these other theaters are, like, waiting to hear, like, when was this play going to happen, when we're, everything was this huge matrix involved, waiting for this phone call. So we did not actually get the rights until, I want to say it's the end of May, and the play was slated to open August 31st. So that changed things. It was a very accelerated process, and from just casting and diving right in. Plus, it's the summer, so everyone's like out of town and away, and it was really hairy. Getting the design process was so sped up. But like I said, it was a play I've been thinking about for a really long time. So to just like put the pieces together, I don't know, it felt really effortless, and it didn't give me time to obsess about it. I just did it.
Yeah. What attracts you to family dramas in general? You've directed a lot of Chekhov family dramas, now Miller, more Chekhov coming up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, The Pillow Man, which is running right now, which is not really about families at all. I'm attracted to plays about families because no matter who you are, whether you like your family or you don't have a family, like, everyone has an idea of what that word means, and I think we have a very different sense of it, but it's a universal truth. I remember when I was pregnant with my first child, my son Noah, and it's this crazy feeling being pregnant, but I remember going to a baseball game and looking around at all the people and thinking to myself, all of these people were born. Like, to somebody. Somebody carried every single one of these people here. And so that is like where the beginning of family comes from. Now, maybe some of those people were adopted, or their parents abandoned them, or they were fostered, or who knows what their idea of family was. But that family is a place that we can all sort of connect. And then, so there's that. And then also that families are always sort of rife with drama, right? We have even in the greatest of families, like, that's so complicated, what those relationships are like, how we try to please our parents, the relationship between Chris and his father in All My Sons, when his father's like, well, what'd you expect me to be? I'm just like other men. And Chris looks at him and says, I expected you to be better. Like, isn't that what we all expect of our parents? And that moment we find out that they're not perfect is just, every adult can remember that moment. I remember I could never tolerate my parents even, like, having a cold, because it was like, no, you can't be less than perfect. And so I think that there's a lot of fodder, and I think it's really fun to talk about in the rehearsal room with actors, too. We have a lot of places to connect about family.
And what kind of talk did you end up having? Just people sharing stories, personal stuff? Or?
Well, yeah, and not. It was very, Eric, who played Chris, is a very good friend of mine, and we've done several shows together, and I happen to know his mom, too, and he was like, I don't have a messed up relationship with my dad. Like, I don't know how to do this, like, play. It's like I can normally draw in my own life, but in this one I just can't. And I remember talking with his mom about that, and how sort of funny it was that we're like, wow, we have no common ground. So now how do we find our way in? But yeah, I think it's just, I like to sort of direct through anecdote, and the play we're working on now, we're talking about misinterpreting in conversations. Like, you're like talking to somebody all night long, and you're like, wow, they're really interested in me, they're totally in love with me, but like actually they just found me a down-to-earth person to talk to, and you like completely misinterpreted the situation. And so I think it's like any time we can draw from the world we live in and put that on stage is really great. And so and that's where our audience comes into play too, right? Who didn't sit in that audience and think about their own family or their own allegiances.
All right. And we'll be right back with part 2 of our interview with Kimberly Senior.